Okay, so let's unpack this. Welcome, everyone, to a deep dive.
Hmm.
And the sources you've brought us today are, well, they're pretty fascinating. Not quite what I expected, maybe.
They really are. A bit striking when you say, we're looking at these excerpts from a PDF.
Right, the one titled 52 Quotes on Semen Retention.
That's it. Closely guarded secrets to intellectual and spiritual power. And it's attributed to Swami Vivekananda.
Yeah, and the whole presentation, that cover art with the horse drawing.
Exactly. And then that ORLI spoof logo. It's quite a juxtaposition.
It really sets a tone, doesn't it? Like you've got this traditional wisdom maybe, but presented in a very modern, almost internet-y way.
Definitely signals a kind of collision there.
So our task here, our mission, is to explore what these specific sources are actually claiming.
Right, about this link between continents, they call it Brahmacharya, or semen retention, and power.
Intellectual power, spiritual, even physical power, they mention. We want to really get the core ideas, understand the perspective in these pages.
And just to be clear up front, especially with this topic, our role isn't to endorse or judge.
Absolutely not.
We're just here to explore the content neutrally, understand the ideas as they're presented here, like reading the map they've laid out.
Agreed. So let's dive into that map. The central claim hits you right away. It's pretty bold.
It is. These sources are basically saying that real power, especially intellectual and spiritual, comes from unbroken brahmacharya.
Complete continence, right? And for a long time, they mentioned 12 years.
Yes, 12 years specifically. It keeps coming up. And they frame it as this closely guarded secret.
Sources 1, 2, 3 really hammer that home. Source 1 just states it flat out. Complete continence gives great intellectual and spiritual power.
Yeah, it's not just about, morals or self-denial. It's presented as the actual mechanism for generating tangible power.
Okay, so if Brahmacharya is the source, how do they say it works? What's the process, the mechanism behind it?
Well, that brings us to this concept they call Ojas. The idea is that this vital energy, especially sexual energy, can be transformed, changed into a higher kind of energy.
Okay.
Source 39 calls Ojas illuminating or bright, the highest energy. Source 44 talks about the sexual force being the dynamo of the human system.
A dynamo. Wow.
Yeah, and it says it can become Ojas, turning into spiritual or intellectual fuel. They even use the word hydraulic in Source 1.
Hydraulic. That's a really mechanical way to put it for spiritual energy.
It is, isn't it? It suggests this powerful flowing force that, if you conserve it and transform it, lifts you up, boosts your potential.
Right. So where does this transformed energy, this Ojas, actually go? Where is it stored?
Sources 51 and 52 get quite specific. They say it's mainly in the brain.
The brain.
Part of the pineal gland they mention. Source 52 says, now this Ojas is stored up in the brain, and the more Ojas is in a man's head, the more powerful he is.
More intellectual, the more spiritually strong. Got it.
And it might permeate the rest of the body too, contributing to overall strength. But the brain seems to be the main storage tank, so to speak.
So the system is conserve the energy via Brahmacharya, transform it to Ojas, store it in the brain, boom, intellectual and spiritual power.
That's the basic framework they lay out.
But to really get it, we also need to look at what they're setting this against. And they spend a lot of time on that, contrasting pleasures and paths.
Oh, definitely. And the division they draw is incredibly stark, almost black and white.
On one side, you've got the senses, right? Physical pleasure, worldly stuff.
And on the other, the higher things, intellect, spirituality, God.
And those sensory pleasures, they get painted in a really negative light.
Extremely negative. Sources like 17, 45, 50, they don't just say these pleasures are lower. They say they're fleeting. They lead directly to misery, suffering, disease.
Even physical breakdown. Source 17 is blunt. All the misery of the world is caused by this slavery to the senses.
And Source 45 says indulging the senses ruins you before you even achieve success. It actively blocks it.
So from this perspective, if you want that power through Ojas, you have to turn away from sensory stuff. It's a requirement.
Exactly. Which leads to their alternative, renunciation and control.
Giving up those desires, controlling the senses rigorously, that's presented as essential.
Absolutely essential for higher knowledge, spiritual power. Sources 8, 9, 22, 24, 35, they all emphasize this.
And Source 24 makes that comparison, doesn't it? Between seeking lower pleasure like an animal.
Yes, that's a recurring theme. Sources 18, 24, 42, 49, they use words like dog, pig, wolf.
Wow.
It's meant to contrast that with the higher pursuits they see as uniquely human intellect, spirituality.
That's such a strong, almost aggressive analogy, using terms like pig or dog. what does that tell us about how seriously they view the danger of focusing on the senses?
Well, I think it's designed to be provocative, to really drive the point home.
To shock you, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. By equating sensory focus with, just basic animal drives, eating, procreation, survival, they're highlighting how far that is from the human potential they believe in.
Which is tied to the mind, to spirit.
Right. So sensory indulgence isn't just neutral, it's actively hindering that unique potential, according to these sources.
Okay. But they do mention different ways of life, right? Like monks who are celibate versus householders, married people. How does Brahmacharya fit there?
That's a good point. Sources like 13, 14, 25, 28, and others address this. They acknowledge householders exist.
They're not saying everyone must be a monk.
No, source 28 even says householders are bound to attain the knowledge of the Atman through rigorous self-discipline. But the ideal of pure chastity, Brahmacharya, is always presented as the foundation for both paths.
So perfect continence is still the ultimate goal for maximum power.
Yes, that seems to be the consistent message. Even if a householder's practice is different, the principle holds. Source 48 even suggests a backsliding monk is, in principle, still ahead of a householder.
That really reinforces how central that celibate ideal is to this specific path to power they're describing.
It does. It's paramount, even if you're not living in a monastery.
Now, to make this less abstract, the sources use some really memorable, even striking examples.
They do. That 12 years idea, for instance. It comes up again and again in sources 1, 2, 3, 5.
And it's linked to extraordinary abilities.
Exactly, like that anecdote in source 2 about Vivekananda himself.
Right, where he claims he could instantly grasp, 10 volumes of the Encyclopedia Britannica?
Yes, and he attributes that directly to his 12 years of unbroken brahmacharya.
It's presented almost like a superpower you gain.
It really is. It connects the theory of Ojas and spiritual power directly to a very concrete, almost unbelievable example of intellectual capacities. Like, see, this is the result.
And then there's that other really intense example in source 26, the one using analogies about temptation involving an archangel and God.
Ah, yes. That one's designed to show the sheer overwhelming power of temptation.
Even for divine beings.
According to this source, yes. It contrasts a pig totally lost in the pleasure of eating, calling it the pig's heaven, with the idea that even the greatest archangel, or God, could be tempted by certain sights.
Like looking at a pig or a woman, respectively, in the analogy.
Right. It's using these extreme, maybe even shocking examples to say that the pull of the senses, especially tied to that generative force, is so incredibly powerful.
That it's a potential challenge for anyone, no matter how elevated.
Exactly. Which underlines why they believe such absolute rigorous control is necessary. Total purity is the only safeguard.
So temptation isn't just a human flaw here, it's like a universal force needing constant vigilance. That reinforces the need for total control over energy and senses.
Precisely. And beyond these stark analogies, they also challenge our ideas about, well, human relationships. There's that quote.
Source 34, yeah. Love of the world is hypocrisy and hollowness. That's strong.
It really is.
What do you think they mean by love of the world? Does that include family, friends, and why call it hollow, hypocritical?
Well, connecting it back to the main theme, it seems any attachment to worldly things, including emotional attachments to people,
is seen as a diversion.
A diversion of that vital energy. If the goal is to channel all energy inward and upward, towards Ojas, towards the divine or higher consciousness,
then loving the world, loving people in it, becomes a leak in the system.
That seems to be the implication. It drains the energy needed for that ultimate transformation. So compared to that higher love or focus, worldly love is framed as hollowness, maybe hypocrisy, if it distracts from the perceived true goal.
So any external focus, even positive ones like family love, is seen as detrimental to accumulating this internal power.
Wow. And they also mention competition.
Right. Source 38 talks about competitions for life or sex gratification.
And dismisses them.
Calls them momentary, unnecessary, extraneous effects caused by ignorance. It suggests that even without competition, our perfect nature would ensure progress.
How does that fit in? It aligns by saying these worldly struggles, fighting for survival, competing for mates, are just distractions rooted in ignorance. The real path is internal mastery, energy transformation, which they see as a natural, non-competitive unfolding of potential.
It completely reframes everyday striving as irrelevant, almost, based on illusion.
It paints a picture entirely focused on redirecting internal energy, rejecting the external world of desires and attachments, all aimed at achieving this peak state of power and perfection.
Let's loop back to the energy transformation itself and the spirituality side. You mentioned Ojas.
And this is where Kundalini comes into the picture. Sources 44 and 52 make that connection explicit.
Kundalini, the energy often visualized as coiled at the base of the spine in yogic traditions.
Exactly, near the generative center. The sources suggest that when sexual energy is conserved and transformed into
It
ojas,
starts to move.
it rises up a central channel often called the Sushumna in these traditions, which runs through the spinal cord up to the brain.
Okay, and what happens when it reaches the brain?
Source 52 says, when the Sushumna channel opens and this Kundalini energy, fueled by Ojas, rises, it activates higher centers in the brain.
Like the chakras. Third eye, crown chakra.
Precisely. Things like the Ajna and Sahasrara chakras. This activation, they claim, leads to a higher state of consciousness. You become super sensuous, super conscious.
Resulting in that increased intelligence, spiritual power, stronger self-expression they talked about.
That's the proposed outcome of the whole process.
So the physical discipline, the continence, is literally fueling an energetic journey up the spine to unlock higher states in the brain. Fascinating. But it's not just physical action, is it? They stress the mental aspect, too.
Oh, absolutely crucial. Mental purity is huge here. Sources 13, 14, 40 emphasize Brahmacharya must be pure in thought, word, and deed.
Not just refraining physically.
No. Source 14 actually warns that unchaste imagination is harmful, saying it's as bad as the unchaste action.
Wow, so even thinking about it is counterproductive.
It's seen as a loss of energy, a dissipation. Source 40 connects unchaste thought directly to losing mental vigor and moral stamina.
So the whole system demands total control, physical continence, yes, but also absolute purification of the mind. Any impure thought is like a leak in the Ojas tank.
It's a truly holistic discipline they're describing. Very demanding.
Yeah.
Mastery over the body's energy and the mind's activity.
All aimed at redirecting that internal force upwards for, well, profound development.
Intellectual and spiritual, yes.
Okay, let's connect this back to you, the listener. Why spend time diving into these specific, maybe challenging sources? How does it help with gaining knowledge and understanding different perspectives?
Well, these sources give you a window into an incredibly focused, incredibly intense view on self-control, on energy, on human potential.
It's a very specific map, isn't it? Rooted in a particular spiritual framework.
Exactly. It proposes a distinct path to power and consciousness, very different from maybe more mainstream ideas.
So we've basically explored this system, as laid out here, that says rigorous continence is the secret key.
Right. The key to transforming vital energy into ojas, achieving intellectual and spiritual power.
By rejecting sensory pleasure, purifying the mind, controlling everything inwards. Understanding this gives you insight into one unique way humans have conceptualized discipline, energy, achievement.
It's like you said earlier, like looking at a completely different operating manual for being human.
So, wrapping up the core message from these sources, they argue the path to ultimate power, as they define it, intellectual, spiritual, demands strict brahmacharya.
Which allows the transformation of vital energy into ojas stored in the brain.
Requires actively renouncing lower sensory pleasures and worldly ties.
And insists on absolute purity, thought, word, and deed.
All leading, ultimately, to awakening higher consciousness.
It's fundamentally about internal mastery, especially over generative and mental energy as the absolute key.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you, something to chew on based on these claims. If mastering internal energy is, as these sources argue, the primary route to unlocking extraordinary potential,
then what systems or practices do we, in modern life, tend to emphasize instead for achieving power or success?
And by focusing so much on external factors, external validation, external striving, what might we be overlooking according to the kind of inward-focused perspective presented here?